Hi there. Welcome to D4I's new YouTube mini-series where we will be interviewing various members of our team so that way we can showcase the experience of what it's like to do this type of data governance work, especially for those who are interested in getting into Indigenous data sovereignty work or just understanding how tribal communities can leverage research processes to make sure that data ownership is within their own. So here we have our first interviewee of the series. If you could introduce yourself.
Thanks, Justin. So my name is Dana Howard. I am a bioethicist and philosopher at The Ohio State University, and I'm an assistant professor in the Center for Bioethics there. And I'm part of the governance and ethics component of the process. My background is in research ethics, and data science ethics. And so I'm just here to support, to think through regulatory stuff, to think through like ethical questions related to governance, and just basically to um, make sure that, I don't know, we create processes that empower Indigenous communities.
Perfect. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that will showcase what it was like to work on this project. So the first one is, how would you describe Indigenous data sovereignty to a tribal community member who doesn't spend a lot of time thinking about data sovereignty in general?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, in some ways it seems a little bit complicated, but really it's a very simple principle that data about Indigenous people, about their health, about their land, about their communities is governed by them, right? Is governed by Native American tribes, is covered by Indigenous communities and the way the information is collected, who owns it, where it's stored, what we actually learn from it. All this is up to tribal nations and tribal communities. It's not up to anybody else. It's not up to the researchers. It's not up to the funding institutions that are funding the research. It's not up to companies that want to make use of that precious data. And basically, Indigenous data sovereignty principles really come from tribes' inherent rights to govern their peoples, their lands, and their resources. And data is just another precious resource that should be up to tribes and tribal communities to govern for their benefit and to advance knowledge according to their terms.
Excellent response. Yeah, a lot of people do not consider the lifeline or the life cycle of data that they think, oh, it's just collected and then it's used. But there are the different components that you described of the data life cycle from what you're going to do with it to collection to usage to even long-term storage. Excellent. So the next question I'd like to ask you is what aspect of this tribal data repository project our team has been working on has excited you the most about it?
I mean, maybe this is in some ways just building on the previous conversation, but the thing that I'm most excited about this project is the way that it's always centered data sovereignty at this as the starting point of all the systems, all of the processes, all of the tools, like the compute where the computers are, like, all every single decision that we've made the starting point has been how do we give tribal nations and tribal communities control, right? And it's different from tweaking sh current practices that have just historically extracted data and exploited people in the past. We've sort of built things from the ground up with this idea that, like, what actually process do we need to have in order for tribal nations to actually have control? And the thing that I love most about that is a lot of times when you think about research ethics and sort of past wrongs that have happened in the name of science against tribal communities, there's always this idea that, oh, we need to regain trust. We need to regain trust in terms of making sure that we can continue doing the research, right? And I think that one of the things that is really cool about this project is that that's not the starting point. It's not about like trying to get trust. It's actually like the starting point is how do we really create systems that give tribal nations and tribal communities and tribal people power. They don't need to trust the researchers. They can have the power to make decisions on their own terms of about how the research is done. And I think that that's just a really transformative way of thinking about how to conduct research with tribal nations and tribal communities responsibly and ethically moving forward.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, this is a mini interview, so hopefully you have gleaned what it's like to do this type of data governance work, especially with data or Indigenous data sovereignty. So I hope that what Donna Howard has said illuminates what we do. And if you're interested in learning more about Indigenous data sovereignty, we have a bunch of other YouTube videos and our social media below that you can see what kinds of resources our team has been working on. Thank you so much for your time and have a good one.
Bye.